Friday, 12 minutes past noon. Bricker and Sons Auto, on the edge of Portland. A titanium gray Whitmore W8 rolled into the lot, its engine coughing where it should have purred. Claire Whitmore stepped out in a white Givenchy suit, heels sharp against the oil-stained concrete. Marcus Bricker grinned at his three mechanics and shoved Ethan forward, hands still black from a transmission job. Marcus flicked an oily rag across Claire's lapel. "He only knows how to change fluids, ma'am," the garage roared. Claire's fist closed at her side. Ethan bowed his head. Then he looked past her shoulder at the W8 and his eyes changed. He had designed that engine. Claire did not flinch at the laughter. She set her purse on the counter, brushed at the dark smear on her lapel once with 2 fingers, and let her voice cut the room flat. "I need a diagnostic." "Now." Marcus straightened, scenting money. He clapped Ethan's shoulder hard enough to leave a print on the fabric. "Caldwell, wash the lady's car. Make it shine. Try not to scratch anything worth more than your apartment." The other mechanics snickered. Ethan picked up a bucket without a word and walked to the bay. He had heard worse in this shop. He had heard worse this week. Marcus rolled up his sleeves and lifted the hood himself. He whistled, low and theatrical, the way a man whistles when he wants the room to hear him performing competence. Fuel pump's gone. Definitely the pump. I've seen it 100 times on these European jobs. Pressure regulator probably went out with it. He tapped a wrench against the manifold for effect. "You're looking at 8,000, ma'am, maybe 9. Parts are a nightmare to source on a Whitmore. We'd have to bring them in from Munich." Claire said nothing. She did not tell him the W8 did not use German parts. She did not tell him the pump on this engine had a 30,000-mile failure rate of effectively 0, because the man who had specified it had handpicked the supplier in 2017. She let Marcus talk. She had learned, very early, that men who lied loudly told you everything you needed to know about them in about 90 seconds. Her gaze drifted toward the bay where Ethan was running a chamois along the W8's roofline. He had stopped moving. He was listening to the idle. Ethan spoke without looking up. His voice was quiet, almost apologetic. "It isn't the pump. The pump's running clean. You can hear it on the second beat of the cycle. That stutter is the secondary EGR valve. Firmware fault, not mechanical. You'd waste $8,000 chasing nothing." Marcus's neck went red. "Did I ask you, Caldwell?" "No, sir." "Sorry, sir." But Claire had turned. Truly turned, for the first time. She looked at the man at the bay at his hands. Calluses, yes. Cracked knuckles from cold mornings, but the fingertips were long and clean at the joints. The nails trimmed close. Engineer's hands, not a lifer mechanic's hands. She filed that away the way she filed everything. Quietly, completely, in the place where she also kept the names of every supplier who had ever shorted her father. Ethan felt her looking. He did not raise his eyes. Through the smudged front window he caught a smaller-shaped Lily, 6 years old, lunchbox clutched to her chest, standing on the sidewalk where he had told her to wait. She waved. He gave her the smallest nod a father can give a daughter without anyone else seeing. Marcus slammed the hood. 8,000. We can have her ready Monday." Claire's eyes did not leave Ethan. "I'll think about it. Ma'am, with respect to a car like this, you don't want amateur opinions floating around. My boys are certified." "Are they?" Marcus's smile slipped half an inch. 100%. She walked toward the bay. Ethan kept polishing. She stopped close enough that he could smell her perfume, something cold and green, like rain on stone. "What did you say it was, again?" "Secondary EGR, ma'am." "And the fix?" "Reflash the ECU. 40 minutes of labor. Maybe $60 in diagnostic time, if your dealer's honest about the hours." She studied the back of his neck. "The faint scar there, the kind you got from a fall onto a workbench corner, the way his shoulders held squared, not slumped, even while polishing another man's car." "What's your name?" "Ethan." "Ethan what?" He looked up then. Just once. "Caldwell." She nodded slowly, the way a person nods when a piece of a puzzle clicks somewhere far back in their mind. Then she turned and walked out without paying Marcus a single dollar. The bell over the door rang once. Marcus stared after her as if she had stolen something he could not name. The bell rang a second time half a minute later, when Lily slipped in. She was small for 6. Hair the color of pale honey. Sneakers scuffed at both toes from running on sidewalk she had been told not to run on. She had been told to wait outside. She had decided that hugging her father was more important than rules. She walked straight into Claire's hip on her way to the bay. because Claire had not yet made it to her car. "Oh, I'm sorry, ma'am. I'm so sorry." Lily ducked her head. Then she looked up, eyes wide, her face suddenly bright with the kind of recognition only a child trusts. "Your car is pretty. It looks like the one my daddy drew in his book." Claire stopped breathing for one full second. His book? Marcus had already crossed the floor. Hey, kid, you don't belong in here. Out, before something falls on you." He reached for her wrist. He never got there. Ethan was between them. The chamois dropped. His voice, when it came, was not loud. It did not need to be. "Don't touch my daughter." The garage went still. The compressor's hiss seemed to drop an octave. Marcus blinked, mouth half open. One of the younger mechanics took a small step back without knowing why. Even the radio on the workbench, which had been muttering a country song about a long road home, seemed to lower its voice. Ethan put one hand, gently, on the crown of Lily's head. "Go to the bench, sweetheart. Eat your sandwich. I'll be there in a minute." Lily went, the way a child goes when she trusts the adult who told her to go. Marcus tried to laugh. The sound came out thin. "Easy, Caldwell. I wasn't gonna hurt the kid." "Christ. Touchy." Ethan did not answer. He just picked up the chamois and went back to the W8. He polished a fender that no longer needed polishing. Claire watched all of it. She watched the way Ethan's jaw stayed tight for 3 seconds after Marcus walked off, then released. She watched him glance toward the bench where Lily was unwrapping a peanut butter sandwich. The look on his face was not pride. It was something older than pride, the soft, exhausted weight of a man who had nothing left in this world to protect except one small girl. Claire walked quietly to the bench. She crouched so she was eye level with Lily. The white suit touched the floor of a working garage, and she did not care. Hi. You said your daddy drew a car like mine?" Lily nodded, mouth full. She swallowed carefully. "In his black book, the one with the leather cover. He keeps it in the drawer by his bed. He said it's from when he used to work on race cars, real ones. The ones that go to France." Lily's brow furrowed, trying to remember the word. Le Monde. Claire's stomach did something cold and quiet. Le Mans, yeah. Lily smiled. "That one. He doesn't talk about it. But sometimes when he's quiet at night he draws in the book, and then he closes it real careful. Like a secret." Across the garage, Ethan was polishing the same fender he had already polished. His hand moved in slow, even circles. He could feel Claire's silence from 20 feet away. Claire stood up slowly. She looked once across the bay at Ethan, then down at Lily again. "Thank you for telling me, sweetheart." "You're welcome, Miss Lady." Claire did not look at Ethan again before she left. But on her way out, she dropped a business card on the counter face down. No name visible to Marcus, with one line written on the back in pen. "I know what your hands are." That night, Claire did not sleep. She sat in the high glass corner office on the 42nd floor of Whitmore Tower, with the city in pieces below her, and she pulled every internal record her clearance allowed. Engineering staff, former contractors, non-disclosure agreements, patent filings going back 10 years. Acquisition paperwork from the year her company had bought Halberd Motorsport, the boutique racing outfit her father had folded into Whitmore in 2020. There was no Ethan Caldwell, not in payroll, not in vendor records, not in any of the consulting agreements her father had signed before he died. The name simply did not exist inside the company that had been built, in part, on the work of his hands. She picked up her phone at 23 minutes past 1 in the morning and called the only man who would still answer her at that hour, Robert Pike, former chief powertrain engineer at Halberd, retired 4 years ago to a cabin in Bend with a workshop and 3 dogs, and an old W series sitting under a tarp behind the barn. The only person alive who knew every name that had ever been quietly removed from the W series history. He picked up on the 4th ring. "Claire, Robert. Tell me about Ethan Caldwell." There was a silence on the line so long she thought the call had dropped. "Robert, you should stop looking, Claire. I can't. Some names don't want to be found again. Let it stay buried. For his sake, maybe for yours. Robert, please. I love you, kid. Your father did too. Good night." He hung up. She sat in the dark with the phone still in her hand. She had not been called kid by anyone since her father died. At the same hour, in a 1-bedroom apartment above Bricker and Sons, Ethan tucked the blanket around Lily's shoulders and kissed her forehead. Captain the Bear was tucked under her arm. The nightlight, a small plastic moon, threw a circle of soft yellow on the wall. He stood in the doorway for a minute and watched her chest rise and fall. Then, He sat on the edge of his own bed and slid open the drawer of his nightstand. The leather book was where it had always been. He opened to the first page, a hand-drawn schematic of the W8 powertrain. Cross-section. Tolerance notes in the margin in his own neat block letters, and at the bottom corner, in dark inky C, Halberd Motorsport, 2019. He closed the book. He sat with it on his lap for a long time, listening to Lily breathe in the next room. Then he put it back in the drawer and turned off the lamp. The next morning, Claire walked through the garage door again. She was not wearing the suit this time. Jeans, a black leather jacket, hair pulled back. Marcus, half a coffee in, nearly choked. "Ma'am, back so soon." She walked past him as if he were furniture. "Ethan." He looked up from a brake job. His hands stilled. "I'd like you to come with me to Whitmore Tower. 1 hour. That's all I'm asking." Marcus broke into a laugh that was meant to be loud and came out brittle. "She's pulling your leg, Caldwell. Lady, that's funny. He's got a daughter to feed." Claire did not turn around. "I'll bring him back by lunch." Ethan looked at her for a long second. He thought of Lily, already at school. He thought of the leather book in the drawer. He thought of the W8 engine, idling wrong in the bay. He wiped his hands on a rag. Okay, 42 floors above downtown Portland. The elevator opened onto a corridor most Whitmore employees did not know existed. White walls. No signage. A single biometric door at the end of a hallway that ended without warning. Claire pressed her palm to the reader. The door whispered open. Inside, under cold spotlights, sat the Whitmore W12 prototype. Matte black. Low. Beautiful in the way certain animals are beautiful, built for one purpose. Indifferent to everything else. A team of 7 engineers stood around it in white coats. They turned at the sound of the door and froze when they saw who Claire had brought in. "This is Ethan," Claire said. "He's here to listen." Claire. A man at the back stepped forward, tall, silver at the temples, a suit cut sharp enough to draw blood. Damien Holt, Chief Operating Officer. He looked Ethan up and down the way a man looks at a stain on a carpet. "Tell me you're joking." "I'm not. You brought a grease monkey into the Geneva room, 6 weeks before launch. Have you lost your mind?" He turned to Ethan with an expression that was almost amused. "Do you even know what a line of ECU code looks like, friend?" Ethan did not answer him. He walked past Damien, past the engineers, past the soft hum of the diagnostic rigs. He put his hand on the prototype's hood flat, palm down, the way a doctor places a hand on a patient's chest. He stood there for almost a minute. He listened. The car wasn't running, but he was listening to it anyway, the way you listen to a person you used to know. "Run it up to 8,000 on the dyno," he said quietly. "On the second run, let me hear it. Not the first. The first one's always clean. The temperature hasn't built yet." The lead engineer looked at Claire. Claire nodded once. They strapped the car down. They walked into the booth. They ran it. The engine climbed clean to 7,000. At 7,800 RPM, it stuttered a thin, wrong sound, like a man catching his own breath on a stair he had climbed 1,000 times. The lead winced. He had been hearing that sound in his sleep for 6 weeks. They cut the throttle. Ethan was already walking back to Claire. "It's not a hardware fault," he said. "It's line 4217 of the ECU firmware. There's a sign error in the camshaft temperature read at high RPM. It's reading positive when it should read negative, above 7,800. The car thinks the engine is safe when it's overheating, so it pushes harder. That's why your dyno keeps cooking the heads. You're not testing an engine. You're testing how long it can lie to itself before it dies." The room did not move. One of the junior engineers looked at his tablet, then at the lead, then back at the tablet. The lead engineer, a man named Hollis, 41 years old, 3 patents of his own, 2 children at home, opened his mouth and then closed it. He had built his career on never being the second smartest person in a room, and he had just discovered he was the third. Damien's face had gone the color of paper. He had stepped 1/2 pace back from the prototype without knowing he had stepped at all. Claire said, very softly, "Open the source." They opened it. 15 minutes later, the lead engineer turned the laptop around so the whole room could see. Line 4217. A single sign character. Positive instead of negative. The lead's voice cracked. "How did you? We've had 9 people on this for 6 weeks. 9 senior engineers. How did you hear that?" Ethan did not answer. Claire was not looking at the screen. She was looking at Damien. He was not looking back. He was looking at the floor between his own shoes, and his right hand had begun, very slightly, to shake. Because 3 months ago, in a session logged under a borrowed credential, belonging to a junior engineer who had since left the company, Damien Holt had committed that single character into the firmware himself, a small piece of sabotage, small enough to look like human error, catastrophic enough, if it shipped to Geneva, to destroy Claire's credibility and force a board vote of no confidence. He had timed it for precisely that purpose. He had not planned for a man in work boots to put a hand on the hood and hear it. Claire said, "Everyone out." Except Ethan. They left. Damien last of all, slowly, as if his legs were learning to walk again. The door closed behind him with the soft pneumatic sigh of a thing designed to keep secrets. When the door closed, she turned to the man in the work shirt and the worn boots, the man with grease still under one fingernail. "Who are you?" "Really?" Ethan looked at the prototype for a long moment before he answered. "I designed the W8 you drove into Bricker's lot. The first 3 iterations of the powertrain. 8 hours a day for 4 years at Halberd Motorsport. I was your father's contractor before he sold Halberd to your company. My name was on the patents. Then where? My wife died 3 years ago. Hit by a driver who fell asleep at the wheel on Interstate 5. I was at Le Mans, testing a tire compound. I wasn't there. I didn't even hear the phone until the next morning." He kept his eyes on the car. "Lily was 3. I walked away from all of it. I told my lawyer to bury the name. I took a job 10 minutes from her school. I promised her I would not choose a car over her again." Claire did not speak for a long time. That evening, she drove to the address she should not have known and climbed the narrow stair to the apartment above Bricker and Sons. She knocked. Lily opened the door, peanut butter on her chin and a crayon behind one ear. "You're the white coat lady from yesterday." "I am." Lily took her hand, simple as that, and pulled her inside. "Look, I drew this in school today." She held up a piece of construction paper, a man, a little girl, and now a woman with dark hair, 3 stick figures under a yellow sun. Claire sat down on the rug. She did not say anything for a long time. She looked at the drawing, and then at the small girl who had drawn it. Lily, satisfied, climbed into her lap as if she had always done so. Claire put one careful hand on her back. Ethan stood in the kitchen doorway, dish towel forgotten in his hand, and for the first time in 3 years he felt 3 breaths in his home instead of 2. The next morning at 7:15, Damien Holt walked into Bricker and Sons. He did not look at Ethan. He looked at Marcus, who was just opening the till. "Mr. Bricker. A word in your office." In the back, behind the closed door, Damien set an envelope on the desk. He did not say what was inside. He didn't need to. The envelope was thick. 50,000, cash. "Tonight, Ethan Caldwell is out of this garage. No reference letter, no severance. You throw him onto the curb with whatever he can carry. We are clear?" Marcus did not even count it. He nodded. He had 3 months of unpaid mortgage on this lot, and he had stopped sleeping in November. He thought, for the first time in a long time, that the universe was finally remembering his name. At 8 to 10, when Ethan walked in, Marcus was waiting by the bay with a toolbox already on the floor, outside the open door. He did it loud. He did it in front of the boys. "Pack it up, Caldwell. You're done. I don't want you on my lot at lunchtime. Don't come back for your last check, there isn't one. You think you're better than me because some woman in a suit looked at you twice? Go find out." Ethan stood for a moment looking down at the battered red toolbox his father had given him when he was 19 years old. The one with his initials still scratched on the underside in a teenage hand. He picked it up by the handle. He looked at Marcus. He smiled. "Just barely. Thank you, Marcus. You just set me free." He walked out into the parking lot with the box in one hand. He did not look back. The other mechanics watched him go. None of them spoke. One of them, the youngest, looked at the floor as if he had failed a test he had not known he was taking. At home there was an envelope on the kitchen counter. Lily had brought in the mail and stacked it neatly the way she did. Whitmore Group Legal. He opened it standing up. 3 weeks earlier, quietly, Claire Whitmore had purchased the outstanding mortgage on Bricker and Sons Auto from the regional bank that had been about to foreclose. Marcus had been 4 months behind. He didn't know yet. He was, as of the closing date, an employee of a holding company wholly owned by Whitmore Automotive. He was working for the woman he had thrown an oily rag at, and he had just accepted $50,000 from a man who was about to be fired from her company. Ethan was still looking at the deed when his phone rang. "Ethan." Claire's voice was steady, but underneath it something thin and stretched. "I need you. Not for Geneva. The board is meeting Monday morning. Damien's been calling members all weekend. He has the votes to remove me unless I walk in there with something he can't answer." A pause. "I think I'm about to lose my father's company." Ethan looked at the envelope. He looked at the photograph on the fridge, Lily and her mother, a summer 2 years before Sarah died. "What time Monday?" "Nina, I'll be there at 8. I'll bring Robert." There was a long pause on the other end. "He won't come for me, Ethan. He'll come for me." The Whitmore boardroom on Monday morning held 11 directors, 2 attorneys, 1 stenographer, and a coffee service no one touched. The long oak table had been a wedding gift from the company's first board to Claire's father, 41 years ago. Her initials were not on it anywhere. His were carved into the underside of the chair at the head, in a place only she had ever looked. Damien Holt stood at the head of the table at her father's chair in a charcoal suit and read from a prepared brief. His voice was calm. His hands did not shake today. He had rehearsed this in front of a mirror at 5 in the morning, twice, with the lighting adjusted both times. "For the record, on Tuesday last, our chief executive officer admitted an unvetted civilian, a mechanic, with no background check, no non-disclosure agreement, no clearance into the Geneva prototype room. She permitted him to physically contact the W-12. This is a direct violation of Section 11 of the Executive Responsibility Charter. I am calling for a vote of no confidence in Claire Whitmore as Chief Executive Officer of Whitmore Automotive Group." 3 directors nodded. 2 looked at the table. The rest waited. The chairman, an 80-year-old former federal judge named Halworth, sat at the far end with his hands folded and his face unreadable. He had been waiting for Claire to walk in for 40 seconds longer than was comfortable. He had begun, at the back of his mind, to count. The door opened. Claire walked in. She was not alone. Ethan walked behind her in a plain black suit, no tie, the red toolbox left at home. In his hand was a leather portfolio. Behind him came a third man, older, white-bearded, slight stoop, eyes very clear. Robert Pike. Damien's mouth pulled into something that wanted to be a smile, and didn't quite make it. Our mechanic. What's he going to do for us, Claire? Read poetry to the board?" Ethan did not look at him. He set the portfolio on the table and slid it toward the chairman. Robert Pike stepped to the front of the room and waited until every face had turned to him. He was 63 years old, and he had not stood in front of a board in 5 years. He stood now the way he had once stood at the foot of a pit lane at Spa-Francorchamps in the rain. "My name is Robert Pike. I was chief powertrain engineer at Halberd Motorsport from 2012 to 2020. I retired the year this company acquired Halberd." The man standing beside Miss Whitmore is Ethan Caldwell. He is the author of approximately 70% of the active patents currently powering every vehicle in the W series, including the one that just secured your last quarter's record earnings. He let that breathe. In 2020, after Mr. Caldwell's departure from the industry, somebody inside this building refiled 3 of his existing patents under a new name to capture continuing royalty payments. The name on those filings was E. Caldwell initial, only paid into a holding account controlled by an officer of this company. That officer has collected approximately $2.1 million over 4 years on work he did not do. Pike looked across the table. "That officer is Damien Holt. The documents are in the folder in front of your chairman." Damien moved before anyone else did. He lunged for the folder and overturned the table edge, coffee spilling, papers fanning across the floor in a slow white wave. 2 security officers had him by the elbows before he reached the door. He did not shout. He did not threaten. He simply went very still, which was worse. The chairman opened the folder with 2 fingers and read in silence for perhaps 90 seconds. He had known Claire since she was 9 years old. He had been a pallbearer at her father's funeral. The original design drawings, dated and signed E. Caldwell, Halberd Motorsport, 2019. The forged 2020 refilings with their badly traced signatures, forensic analysis attached, the internal commit log showing the line 4217 sabotage pushed under Damien's borrowed credentials, bank transfers, wire confirmations, 4 years of careful theft printed in tidy black columns. The chairman closed the folder. He folded his hands on top of it. He looked at Damien for a long, neutral moment, the way an old man looks at a dog that has bitten a child. "Mr. Holt," he said, "sit down." Damien sat. Or rather, the officers seated him. The chairman turned to the room. "I am calling a motion to remove Damien Holt as Chief Operating Officer of Whitmore Automotive Group, effective immediately. I am further moving that this board refer the matter to the United States Attorney's Office for the District of Oregon, with full cooperation from internal counsel." Show of hands. 11 hands went up. The motion passed in 6 minutes. There was no triumphalism in the room. No one looked at Damien as he was led out. The directors gathered their things in silence and filed past Claire one by one, and 3 of them, the 3 who had been nodding earlier, paused at the door and offered her, each in turn, the smallest professional bow. She accepted each without a word. The room emptied. Claire stayed at the long window, hands pressed flat against the glass, shoulders held very still. When she finally turned around, her eyes were wet. She did not bother to hide it. She did not run to him. She did not need to. Ethan, from across the room, gave her the smallest nod a man can give a woman without anyone else seeing. The same nod he had given his daughter through the smudged window of a garage. "I didn't do this for you. I did it because it deserved to be done." She heard it anyway. That afternoon, while Ethan was downstairs signing employment paperwork and patent restitution documents he had not asked for and would receive anyway, Claire drove to Eastside Elementary and waited in the pickup line in a borrowed Subaru she had asked her assistant to find because the W8 would have embarrassed a 6-year-old. Lily came out of the doors with her backpack hanging off one shoulder. She stopped when she saw who was in the driver's seat. She did not look surprised. She climbed in and buckled herself the way her father had taught her. "Hi, Miss Claire." "Hi, Lily." They drove. Halfway home, Lily put her small hand on Claire's wrist where it rested on the gear shift. "Are you going to stay for dinner with my daddy?" Claire smiled. It was the first real smile of the year. "If your daddy invites me, I'll stay." Pasta. Garlic bread from a paper bag. A bottle of grocery store red Claire had picked up on the way. 3 plates on a table that had only ever been set for 2. Lily ate fast and talked faster about a frog in the school garden, about a boy named Tobias who could not tie his shoes, and about how Miss Anders said the moon was actually a piece of the earth that broke off, and Lily was not sure if she believed Miss Anders or not, and then, in the middle of a sentence about a butterfly, fell asleep sitting up. Ethan and Claire ate the rest in quiet. Outside, a dog barked somewhere down the block. The radiator clicked. The kitchen light hummed. On the wall above the table, a child's crayon drawing of 3 stick figures under a yellow sun had been taped at a slight angle, the corners already curling. "Why did you leave Halberd?" Claire said. "Really? Why bury it? All of it?" Ethan turned his fork over in his hand. "Because Sarah called me twice the night she died. I was in a pit lane in France. I had my radio in. I didn't pick up. The second call went to voicemail. I listened to it after the funeral." She said, "The rain is bad. I love you. Call me back." His voice was even. He had told this story to exactly no one. "I told myself if I survived that year, I would never again choose a piece of machinery over the people in my house. I kept the promise. I'm still keeping it." Claire set her wine down very carefully. For a long moment she did not speak. She had spent the entire afternoon pretending the boardroom had not shaken her. And now, sitting at a kitchen table above a garage, she could feel her hands shaking for the first time all day. "My father died in the boardroom 2 floors above where the board sat today. Massive coronary. I was 28. I was in Singapore closing a deal he had not asked me to close. I was trying to prove something to him I should have stopped trying to prove a long time before. I flew home overnight. I inherited an empire and a corner office and a chair with his initials carved into the back, and no one to tell when I was tired." She looked at her hands. "I am tired most days." They sat with that. Neither of them filled it. "You bought the garage," Ethan said after a minute. "Before any of this?" "Yes." "Why?" She thought about it for a long time before she answered. "Because he hurt your daughter, with words, and I had the money to make sure that no man on that lot would ever raise a hand near her again. I wasn't planning to tell you. I wasn't planning anything. I just couldn't drive past that building knowing I could have done something and didn't." Ethan looked at her across the table. He nodded once. He did not say thank you. The thank you was already inside the nod, the way most of his important sentences were. Lily had slipped sideways on the couch, mouth open, arms around a worn brown bear named Captain. Ethan stood and lifted her gently, the way he had lifted her every night for 3 years, and carried her down the short hall. When he came back, Claire was at the window. The moon was hanging low over the rooftops on the next block. It lit one side of her face and left the other in shadow. He walked toward her. He stopped 1 step short. She did not turn. "I don't need you to come any closer right now. I just need to know, are you going to stay?" Yes. That was the whole conversation. No kiss, no reach, just one breath, and another, and a man and a woman standing 1 step apart in a kitchen above a garage, while a small girl slept down the hall. Outside, somewhere, the city kept moving. Inside, for 1 long minute, nothing did. 6 weeks later, Geneva. The Whitmore W12 prototype rolled onto the stage under arena lights, and a sound system pitched low and clean. 2,000 journalists, dealers, and competitors held their breath in unison. Claire Whitmore stood at the podium in deep navy and let the silence work for her before she leaned into the microphone. "This project," she said, "was saved by a man we very nearly missed. A man who was working in a garage 12 miles from this company's headquarters, while 3 of his patents paid another man's mortgage. A man who, when we found him, was polishing somebody else's car and trying to feed his daughter on $22 an hour. Ladies and gentlemen, Ethan Caldwell, our new director of powertrain engineering." He walked out from the wing in a black suit that fit him like he had been born inside it. The flashbulbs did nothing to him. He had been photographed before, in a previous life. He scanned the 3rd row until he found her, Lily, in a navy dress with white tights, sitting on Robert Pike's shoulders, waving with both hands like she was directing a plane onto a runway. Ethan smiled. He did not wave back. He didn't need to. She already knew. The applause lasted 40 seconds. Claire let it. Then she stepped aside and let him say a single sentence into the microphone, the only words he would say all night. "This car," he said, "was built by a team, not by one man. I'm grateful to be part of one again." He stepped back. The cameras kept clicking. Somewhere in the front row, an editor from a German motoring magazine was already writing the headline that would run on Tuesday morning across half of Europe. 3 weeks after Geneva, on the corner where the old sign had read Bricker and Sons Auto, a new sign went up in plain white letters on dark blue: Caldwell and Lily Auto Care. Neighborhood repairs. Weekends only. Ethan kept the bay. He paid Marcus Bricker a fair severance and let him walk away with what dignity he had left, which was less than Marcus deserved and more than he had expected. The shop opened Saturdays at 9. The neighbors brought their Camrys and their old Ford trucks and their teenagers' first cars. Ethan charged them honestly and sometimes not at all. Lily ran the lemonade stand by the bay door for 50 cents a cup. She was, on a good Saturday, the 2nd highest earner on the lot. On a Saturday in May, Claire pulled up at 5 in the afternoon in a beat-up Subaru that everyone on the block now recognized. Lily came barreling out the open bay door with grease on one cheek and a juice box in her fist. "Miss Claire." Claire knelt on the sidewalk and caught her. Lily fit against her shoulder like she had always fit there. Over the top of the small honey-colored head, Claire's eyes met Ethan's, where he stood wiping his hands on a blue rag in the open door of the garage. He smiled at her. The same small smile he had given her once across the smudged window of a place she would never set foot in again, the day she had walked in wearing white and walked out without paying. Only this time, the smile was for her, and it was not small at all. They did not speak. They did not need to. Lily tugged at Claire's hand. "Daddy made spaghetti. Are you staying?" "I'm staying. Forever?" Ethan, in the doorway, did not answer for her. He let Claire answer. He had learned, somewhere along the way, that the most important sentences in a small girl's life were the ones she heard with her own ears. Claire kissed the top of Lily's head and looked up at Ethan over the small honey-colored crown. "Yes," she said. "Forever." In this story, a group of men had humiliated a poor mechanic in a garage on a Friday afternoon. They had thrown an oily rag at a stranger in a white suit. They had laughed at a man with a child waiting outside on the sidewalk. What they had not known, what none of them had known, was that the thing coming for them was not revenge. It was a family.